There are certain decades that feel larger than life, and California in the 1970s was one of them. It was a place that felt like it was always one step ahead of the rest of the country. The sun seemed brighter, the dreams felt closer, and the future looked like it was being invented in real time. If you lived there, you did not just feel like you were in another state. You felt like you were inside the engine of American culture itself. This was California before it became crowded, before housing prices exploded, before traffic defined daily life. It was imperfect, chaotic, and sometimes uneasy, but it was electric. Let us step back into that world and experience what it was really like to live in California during the 1970s. Living in California in the 1970s meant lifestyle came first. The climate shaped everything. In Southern California especially, the idea of 4 distinct seasons barely existed. Most days were warm, dry, and sunny. Homes were built to take advantage of that. Sliding glass doors were everywhere, opening living rooms directly onto patios. Backyards were extensions of the house, with barbecues, lawn chairs, and often a swimming pool. Pools were not reserved for the wealthy. They were common middle-class features, especially in newer suburban developments. Kids learned to swim early, and summer meant sunburns, popsicles, and running through sprinklers. The housing boom was still going strong. Entire neighborhoods seemed to appear overnight. Orange County was rapidly transforming from farmland into endless tracts of single-family homes. San Fernando Valley suburbs stretched outward, offering affordable houses to families moving west from the Midwest and East Coast. Many of these homes were bought on a single income. A factory worker, aerospace engineer, teacher, or mid-level office worker could realistically afford a home. That reality feels almost unimaginable today. Inside those homes, the 1970s aesthetic was unmistakable. Earth tones dominated everything. Brown, beige, mustard yellow, and burnt orange were everywhere. Shag carpeting covered floors wall to wall. Kitchens featured laminate countertops and appliances in avocado green or harvest gold. Wood paneling lined living rooms and dens, creating warm but dim interiors. Hanging macrame plant holders with spider plants or pothos were common. California homes had a relaxed, casual feel that matched the state's image. California was, and still is, defined by cars, and the 1970s were the peak of that culture. Freeways were newer and less congested. Driving across Los Angeles was actually manageable. Cars were big and heavy, with wide bench seats and enormous hoods. Station wagons with faux wood paneling hauled families and surfboards alike. Muscle cars were still common, and the sound of a V8 engine was part of everyday life. Then came the shock of the 1973 oil crisis. Gas prices skyrocketed, and lines formed at stations across the state. Californians, who had built their lives around driving long distances, suddenly had to ration fuel. Odd even gas buying days based on license plates became common. Smaller, fuel-efficient Japanese cars like Toyota and Datsun began appearing more frequently, quietly changing the future of the American auto market. One vehicle came to symbolize California freedom in the 1970s, the van. Custom vans with murals, shag carpet interiors, mood lighting, and sometimes even waterbeds became rolling expressions of personality. Driving a conversion van up the Pacific Coast Highway, windows down, music playing, felt like the ultimate California experience. Music was everywhere in California in the 1970s, and the state dominated the sound of the decade. Los Angeles was the heart of the recording industry. The so-called California sound was polished, melodic, and introspective. Bands and artists came from everywhere just to be there. The Eagles formed in Los Angeles and went on to become the best-selling American band of the decade. Their music captured both the dream and the disillusionment of California life. Hotel California was not just a song, it was a mood. Fleetwood Mac relocated to California and recorded Rumors, an album filled with personal drama that somehow became universal. Laurel Canyon remained legendary. Artists like Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, and James Taylor created deeply personal songs that defined the era. Concert venues like the Troubadour, the Roxy, and the Forum were cultural landmarks. Being in California meant being close to where music history was happening. At the same time, Northern California was quietly laying the foundation for the future. Silicon Valley didn't yet have that name for most people, but something big was happening. Engineers and hobbyists gathered in garages, labs, and small offices around Palo Alto and Mountain View. Apple Computer was founded in 1976 by two young men working out of a garage. The Apple II brought personal computing into homes and classrooms. Atari, based in Sunnyvale, was creating the video game industry. Intel was developing microprocessors that would change everything. Most people had no idea how important these developments would become, but the energy was there. Southern California was also powered by the aerospace industry. Companies like Lockheed, Northrop, and McDonnell Douglas employed tens of thousands of workers. These were solid, well-paying jobs that attracted skilled workers from across the country. California felt like a place where science, engineering, and imagination all converged. Hollywood in the 1970s was experiencing a creative renaissance. This was the era of New Hollywood, when young directors were given unprecedented freedom. Films like The Godfather, Chinatown, American Graffiti, Jaws, and Star Wars came out of California and redefined cinema. Movie theaters were still communal experiences. Seeing a blockbuster meant waiting in line, buying popcorn, and being part of a crowd reacting together. Television production centered in Los Angeles shaped what America watched every night. Sitcoms, dramas, and variety shows were taped in studios scattered throughout the city. Working in the entertainment industry was a dream many Californians chased, whether as actors, writers, crew members, or musicians. Beach culture remained central to California identity. Surfing was still a way of life in coastal towns like Huntington Beach, Malibu, and Santa Cruz. Each beach had its own vibe. Venice Beach became famous for its eccentric boardwalk culture. Bodybuilders trained at Muscle Beach. Street performers, artists, and odd characters turned the area into a living spectacle. Skateboarding exploded during the 1970s, especially in Southern California. A severe drought left swimming pools empty, and teenagers turned them into makeshift skate parks. The Z-Boys from Santa Monica revolutionized the sport with aggressive, surf-inspired techniques. Skateboarding went from a toy to a serious subculture, laying the foundation for modern extreme sports. Disco also made its mark. Roller skating became wildly popular. Roller discos opened across the state, complete with flashing lights, disco balls, and loud music. People spent entire evenings skating in circles, showing off outfits and dance moves. It was social, energetic, and very California. Food culture in California was quietly changing the nation. In Berkeley, Alice Waters opened Chez Panisse in 1971, introducing a focus on fresh, local, seasonal ingredients. The farm-to-table movement was born. Health food stores, juice bars, and vegetarian restaurants were far more common in California than elsewhere. People talked about organic food and nutrition long before it became mainstream. Mexican food was an everyday part of life. Tacos, burritos, tamales, and enchiladas were inexpensive, filling, and authentic. California's proximity to Mexico and a large Mexican-American population meant real regional cuisines were available everywhere. Fast food chains expanded rapidly, but local taquerias often outshined them. Of course, life in California in the 1970s was not all sunshine. Pollution was severe, especially in Los Angeles. Smog alerts were common, and the mountains sometimes disappeared behind a gray haze. Environmental awareness grew as a result. California began implementing stricter environmental regulations, setting standards the rest of the country would eventually follow. Housing prices, while affordable early in the decade, began rising faster than elsewhere by the late 1970s. The seeds of California's future affordability crisis were already being planted. Traffic was increasing, though it had not yet become the daily nightmare it would later be. What truly defined California in the 1970s was the feeling of possibility. It felt like a place where reinvention was not just possible, but expected. People came to California to start over, to chase careers, creativity, and freedom. The state was shaping technology, entertainment, music, food, and lifestyle in ways that would ripple across the world. For those who lived there, California in the 1970s wasn't perfect, but it was our early Megid. The sun, the optimism, the innovation, and the sense of being close to the future created something unforgettable. It was a moment when California felt young, open, and endlessly promising. And for anyone who remembers that era, there is a reason it still feels golden all these years later.